At 5:45 in the morning, I opened the garage and found an empty driveway. My father, Robert Carter, was already dressed for the hospital. He sat in his wheelchair wearing the navy blue jacket he saved for medical appointments, with a folder of test results resting on his lap. "Daniel," he called from behind me, "where's the van?" I stared at the tire marks running across the concrete. Near the curb lay a broken piece of black plastic from the wheelchair lift. A yellow notice had been taped to our mailbox. "Vehicle removed for safety non-compliance." I called Linda Mercer, the HOA president. She answered on the fourth ring. "Your vehicle was removed under the oversized vehicle policy. It was parked in my private driveway. It violated community standards. My father has a cardiac appointment in 40 minutes. His wheelchair lift, backup battery, and medical equipment are inside." Linda paused, but only briefly. "You should not store medical equipment in a prohibited vehicle." I called Simmons Recovery next. The dispatcher refused to tell me where the van was unless I paid the towing fee, storage charge, administrative release fee, and outstanding HOA fines. Then the hospital called. Dr. Maya Patel's nurse asked why my father had not arrived. Behind me, Robert gripped the arms of his wheelchair and tried to hide the fear on his face. I checked our driveway camera. The recording had gone black for exactly 8 minutes during the tow. At first, I thought the evidence was gone. Then my neighbor Emily walked across the street holding her phone. "My doorbell camera caught everything," she said. On the screen, Linda stood beside the van while a tow operator covered the disability placard with her coat. 3 months earlier, I had moved back into my father's house after his second hospitalization for heart failure. Robert Carter had spent most of his career as a Navy electrical engineer. He was never the kind of man who complained. Even after diabetes damaged his circulation and walking became painful, he insisted on repairing small appliances at the kitchen table and making his own coffee every morning. Then his heart condition worsened. His doctor warned that he could no longer live alone safely. I took leave from my industrial maintenance job and moved into the spare bedroom. My father hated the idea. "I'm not going into a nursing home," he said. "You're not. I don't want you giving up your life. I'm helping you keep yours." His old sedan could not carry a wheelchair. Medical transportation was expensive and had to be booked days in advance. So I sold my motorcycle and used most of my savings to buy a used passenger van. I installed a hydraulic wheelchair lift, non-slip flooring, secure chair restraints, an oxygen tank mount, a medical charging outlet, and a backup battery system. The first time I drove him to the lake, he sat quietly for most of the trip. Then he said, "I thought being sick meant I would never leave the house without becoming someone's problem." "You're not a problem," I told him. "The van is just a tool." To me, it was more than that. It gave my father access to doctors, therapy, grocery stores, and ordinary afternoons outside the house. It gave him back a small amount of independence. To Linda Mercer, however, it was simply an ugly vehicle parked where she could see it. Linda first approached me while I was testing the wheelchair lift. She stood at the end of the driveway holding a tablet and wearing the expression of someone inspecting damaged property. "That vehicle is unusually large," she said. "It needs to be. It resembles a commercial shuttle. It's a medically modified family van." She walked around the front but avoided looking inside. The HOA has restrictions on oversized and commercial-looking vehicles. I showed her the registration, disability placard, and modification certificate. The van was legally registered as a personal vehicle. It sat entirely inside my driveway. Nothing blocked the sidewalk. Nothing extended into the street. Linda barely glanced at the documents. Medical circumstances do not automatically override community rules. My father's wheelchair is not a preference. Everyone has a reason for wanting an exception. This is not an exception. The rule does not apply. Her mouth tightened. She raised her tablet and photographed the van from the rear corner. From that angle, the disability placard was hidden behind the windshield frame, and the wheelchair lift could not be seen. I noticed the choice immediately. Why not take a picture from the front? I'm documenting the violation. You're documenting only the part that supports your claim. She ignored me and walked away. That evening, an official notice arrived by email. It accused us of parking an oversized commercial vehicle overnight. I replied with all the paperwork. I also requested a reasonable accommodation based on my father's disability. Linda rejected it within 20 minutes. She claimed the request required full board review. No board meeting was scheduled. The next morning, another notice appeared. This one added a daily fine. By the end of the week, Linda had turned a medical vehicle into an enforcement campaign. The first fine was $50. Then came $100 per day. The violation descriptions changed whenever I challenged them. Oversized vehicle, commercial appearance, unapproved external equipment, overnight parking, obstruction of neighborhood views, possible oil leak, expired registration. The registration was current. The van did not leak. The lift was part of the approved medical modification. Linda knew those facts because I had sent the documents 3 times. I requested a formal hearing. She delayed it. I requested the board's disability accommodation procedure. She said no separate procedure existed. I asked whether she had presented my request to the board. She did not answer. Instead, the HOA added administrative fees and threatened towing. My father saw one of the notices on the kitchen counter. "You should park it somewhere else," he said. "There is nowhere else. I can use medical transport. That service cancelled on you twice last month. I don't want you fighting these people because of me." I'm not fighting them, I'm making them follow their own rules. I created a folder for every document. Emails, photographs, receipts, medical letters, appointment schedules, and HOA notices all went inside. I also downloaded our driveway camera recordings each week. Then Linda made a mistake. An internal email intended for the property manager was accidentally copied to me. It read, "Once we tow one, the rest will comply." The message was not about my father's van alone. Linda wanted to establish a precedent. If she could tow a medically modified vehicle from a private driveway, every resident with a work truck, large family vehicle, or older car would be easier to control. I saved the email in 3 locations. A few days later, the HOA announced a new towing contract with Simmons Recovery. That was when the fines stopped looking like punishment and began looking like a business model. At the next HOA meeting, Linda praised Simmons Recovery as a professional partner dedicated to neighborhood appearance and safety. She did not mention how the company would be paid. I requested a copy of the contract. The HOA refused, calling it confidential vendor information. That answer made no sense. Residents were funding the agreement, so I asked several neighbors whether they had received towing warnings. 7 had. One family had been threatened over a plumbing van parked overnight during an emergency repair. Another resident received a notice because her adult son's pickup had a ladder rack. A retired teacher had been warned that her wheelchair transport vehicle exceeded the approved height. The pattern was obvious. Brad Simmons, the towing company owner, visited our street one afternoon. He parked near the mailbox and studied my father's van. I watched through the camera. Linda arrived several minutes later. They spoke beside his truck. The microphone captured only parts of the conversation. Brad said, "It has a disability placard." Linda replied, "The policy doesn't make exceptions." He looked toward our house. "It's in the driveway." "Not yet," she said. "Wait until the morning of his appointment." That sentence changed everything. Linda knew the van was medically necessary. She also knew exactly when my father needed it. She was not merely planning enforcement. She was choosing the moment that would create the most pressure. I later obtained a partial copy of the towing agreement through a board member. Simmons Recovery kept every towing and storage fee. The HOA received a neighborhood enforcement credit when monthly tow numbers exceeded a target. The more vehicles removed, the more money flowed back into the enforcement budget. Linda had created a system that rewarded aggressive towing. My father's van was meant to become the first public example, and she intended to take it when we were least able to fight back. Dr. Maya Patel scheduled my father for an early cardiac evaluation on Thursday morning. His blood pressure had become unstable, and a recent medication change caused dizziness. The hospital also needed to inspect the portable monitoring unit he used at home. "Do not miss this appointment," Dr. Patel told me. "We need to see whether the new medication is affecting his heart rhythm." 2 days before the appointment, I emailed Linda and the full HOA board. I attached the appointment confirmation, the disability placard, the van registration, and a letter from the hospital stating that the vehicle was medically necessary. I asked the HOA to suspend enforcement while my appeal remained unresolved. Linda did not respond. My father heard me leaving a voicemail for the property manager. "Rent another vehicle," he said. "A standard van can't secure your wheelchair. Then call medical transport. They need 72 hours notice, and they already told us they're booked." He looked down at his hands. "I hate that you have to explain my condition to strangers. You shouldn't have to. Maybe hide the van behind the house." We followed every rule that matters. I knelt beside his chair. "We are not hiding the van because Linda dislikes how illness looks." That evening, I checked the cameras and locked the vehicle. The backup battery, monitor cables, and appointment records were inside because we needed to leave before sunrise. At 2:17 a.m., a tow truck entered the neighborhood with its headlights dimmed. Our driveway camera recorded a bright infrared flare. Then the image disappeared. For 8 minutes, there was no usable footage. By the time the camera returned, the driveway was empty. Linda had not ignored my email. She had used it to choose the exact night. Emily's doorbell video showed the entire operation. Brad Simmons arrived with another tow employee and backed slowly toward our driveway. Linda stood near the curb wearing a long beige coat. The van was clearly parked on private property. Its disability placard was visible through the windshield. Brad pointed toward it. Even without perfect audio, his hesitation was obvious. Linda handed him a signed towing authorization. Then she removed her coat and draped it over the front corner of the windshield, covering the placard. She directed the second worker to photograph the van from behind. The wheelchair lift was on the opposite side and could not be seen. The video captured Linda saying, "Listed as guest parking. Don't show the placard." Brad asked, "What about the medical equipment?" "He can retrieve personal items after payment." The tow employee placed infrared lights toward our house. That explained the camera interference. The truck entered the driveway. Its GPS later confirmed the location, although the tow form claimed the van had been parked in a common visitor area. As the operator raised the rear of the vehicle, the wheelchair lift struck the concrete. A piece of its housing broke off. Brad stopped and inspected the damage. Linda looked toward our dark windows. "Take it somewhere he won't get it back quickly." The van was pulled away at 2:25 a.m. The operation had been planned to create photographs that supported a false story. Private driveway became common parking. A disability van became an abandoned, oversized vehicle. Medical equipment became personal property held behind a payment demand. Linda believed darkness would erase the truth. But Emily's camera recorded the street from an angle Linda had never noticed. By sunrise, the van was gone. The evidence was not. My first call to Simmons Recovery lasted less than 2 minutes. The dispatcher confirmed they had the van but refused to provide the storage location until I verified payment. The total included a towing fee, overnight storage, gate release fee, administrative charge, and more than $3,000 in HOA fines. "The medical equipment inside belongs to my father," I said. "You can retrieve personal items after authorization." "Where is the vehicle?" "I cannot release that information until the account is processed." I called Linda again. She said the tow was lawful and suggested I pay quickly before storage fees increased. "My father is waiting for a cardiac appointment." "That is unfortunate, but the HOA cannot suspend standards for personal scheduling." Soon after, my father began complaining of pressure in his chest. He insisted it was anxiety. I called emergency services anyway. The paramedics arrived within minutes and transported him by ambulance. I followed in a rideshare carrying only the documents I could find inside the house. The backup battery and device cables remained in the impounded van. At the hospital, Dr. Patel stabilized him and ordered additional monitoring. The missed appointment became an emergency admission. She documented the reason carefully. Treatment delay caused by loss of medically modified transportation and inaccessible equipment. The ambulance, emergency evaluation, and replacement equipment cost far more than the original appointment. Robert looked exhausted. "I told you not to fight them," he said. "I'm not letting them do this to someone else." He closed his eyes. For the first time, I was not thinking about HOA rules or fines. I was thinking about how close Linda had come to turning a towing dispute into a medical disaster. Then Emily called and told me her camera had captured Linda covering the placard. I asked her to save the original file. The story Linda had created was about an abandoned vehicle. The truth was now about deliberate interference with medical access. After my father was admitted for observation, I returned home and inspected the driveway camera. The system had not malfunctioned. Its diagnostic log showed intense infrared interference, beginning at 2:17 a.m. and ending exactly 8 minutes later. Someone had deliberately blinded it. A partial reflection in the first frame showed a person standing near the camera with a portable light. I exported the diagnostic report. Then Emily came over. She was nervous. "Linda has fined me before," she said. "If she finds out I gave you the video, she'll come after my house. I won't use your name without permission." She handed me a flash drive. The recording was better than I expected. It showed the van inside my driveway. The placard was visible. Linda covered it. Brad took staged photographs. The truck damaged the lift. The microphone recorded the words, "Don't show the placard. We need it to look abandoned." I made multiple copies immediately. The file metadata confirmed the date, time, and continuous recording. There were no edits. I sent everything to attorney Rebecca Lane, who handled disability access and property cases. She reviewed the tow authorization and noticed more false information. The location was wrong. The vehicle was described as unregistered. The form said no disability permit was visible. Linda had signed beneath a statement certifying that all information was accurate. Rebecca also obtained the towing truck's GPS route. It stopped inside my driveway for 11 minutes. Brad called me that afternoon. His voice had changed. "I didn't know your father ended up in the hospital. You knew it was a medical van. I was following the authorization. You followed instructions to hide the placard." He said nothing. I told him the board meeting would be held the following week. "If you repeat Linda's story, the video will prove you lied." Brad exhaled slowly. For the first time, the towing company owner understood that Linda might sacrifice him to save herself. The community hall was full before the meeting began. Residents had heard about the van, although Linda's email described it as a routine towing dispute exaggerated by an angry homeowner. She sat at the center of the board table. Brad Simmons occupied a chair near the front as the HOA's towing expert. Rebecca sat beside me with a laptop and 3 binders. The meeting was live-streamed. Linda opened with a prepared statement. She claimed the van had accumulated repeated violations. She said it appeared abandoned, displayed no visible disability permit, and was parked in a common guest area. She insisted the HOA acted only after giving proper notice. Then she displayed the photographs taken during the tow. Every image came from the rear. None showed the placard, the lift, or the driveway. I stood. Was the van parked on my property? No, Linda said. It was in a shared parking area. I looked at Brad. Did your truck enter my driveway? He studied the table. The authorization listed guest parking. That wasn't the question. Linda interrupted. Mr. Carter is not conducting a trial. Rebecca placed the GPS report on the projector. The tow truck's route ended directly inside my property. Residents began whispering. Linda called the data unreliable. I displayed the modification certificate and current registration. She said those records did not change the violation. Then my phone rang. The caller ID showed Dr. Maya Patel. I asked the board for permission to answer. Linda objected. Several residents demanded that I take the call. I placed the phone on speaker. Dr. Patel's voice filled the room. She was not calling to discuss parking. She was calling with an update on my father's condition. And her words changed the entire meeting. Dr. Patel confirmed that my father remained under observation after the delayed cardiac evaluation. His heart rhythm had stabilized, but the missed appointment prevented the planned medication review from happening on schedule. The medically modified van was his reliable transportation, she explained. It also contained backup power and device accessories required for his monitoring equipment. Linda leaned toward her microphone. Doctor, with respect, the hospital does not determine HOA parking policy. Dr. Patel answered calmly. I'm not discussing parking policy. I'm documenting the medical consequences of your decision. The room went quiet. She explained that a standard taxi could not safely transport Robert's wheelchair. A last-minute medical vehicle had not been available. The ambulance trip and emergency admission became necessary after his symptoms worsened. Linda tried to redirect the conversation. The family had received multiple notices. Were you informed that the vehicle was medically necessary? Dr. Patel asked. Linda hesitated. I projected the email I had sent 2 days before the appointment. The hospital letter was attached. The delivery receipt showed Linda had opened it. Several residents reacted loudly. Dr. Patel then asked whether my father could speak. A nurse placed him on the call. His voice was weak but clear. I told Daniel not to fight this, he said. I thought keeping quiet would protect him. You were trying to protect me, I replied. I was wrong. People like this depend on us being too tired to object. Linda called the statement emotional manipulation. That was the moment she lost the room. Residents who had remained neutral began demanding to see the towing authorization and disability documentation. Dr. Patel ended the call after confirming that Robert would likely be discharged the next day. Rebecca closed the medical file. The hospital has established the harm, she said. Now we will establish intent. I inserted Emily's flash drive into the laptop. The first frame showed the van sitting inside my driveway. Then Linda appeared beside it. The video played on the large screen behind the board. The timestamp read 2:18 a.m. The van sat fully inside my driveway. Its disability placard was visible through the windshield. Brad pointed toward it. Linda removed her coat. Then she covered the placard. Residents gasped. The next clip showed her directing the camera angle. Her voice came through clearly. Don't show the placard. We need it to look abandoned. Linda immediately called the footage edited. Emily stood from the back row. It came from my doorbell camera, she said. That is the original file. Rebecca displayed the metadata. The recording was continuous. There were no cuts. The GPS report confirmed the tow truck's location. The infrared diagnostic log proved our camera had been deliberately blinded during the same 8-minute window. Then the screen showed the wheelchair lift striking the concrete. Brad lowered his head. I asked him directly, "Did Linda instruct you to record the wrong location?" He remained silent. Rebecca reminded him that the live stream and meeting recording were active. Brad finally stood. She said the board had approved it. That is not what I asked. He looked toward Linda. She told us to list guest parking. She told the driver not to photograph the front. She said to keep the van until the fines were paid. Linda accused him of lying to protect his company. Brad removed his phone and opened their messages. One read, "Wait until the morning of his appointment. He will pay faster." Another said, "Cover the placard before taking compliance photos." The room erupted. Linda had spent weeks insisting the tow was an administrative decision. Her own words showed that it had been a calculated act of pressure. She had not failed to notice the disability permit. She had ordered it hidden. Rebecca presented the evidence in order. The valid registration, the disability placard, the medical modification certificate, my accommodation request, Linda's denial, the hospital appointment notice, the false towing authorization, Emily's video, the truck GPS, the infrared interference report, Brad's messages. Then she displayed the towing contract. Simmons Recovery received every towing and storage fee. The HOA received enforcement credits when monthly tow numbers reached specific targets. Linda had also proposed a new oversized vehicle rule scheduled for approval after my father's van was removed. An email to the board explained the strategy. Once we tow one, the rest will comply. Another message stated, "The Carter van is the most visible test case." Linda claimed she was enforcing uniform standards. Rebecca pointed to the financial incentive. More towing produced more revenue for Simmons Recovery and more enforcement credits for the HOA. Then she returned to the timing. "You knew Mr. Carter had a cardiac appointment the next morning." Linda said the date was irrelevant. Rebecca projected the message. "Wait until the morning of his appointment. He will pay faster." The silence that followed was heavier than the shouting before it. "You did not remove an abandoned vehicle," Rebecca said. "You seized medical access to create fear and revenue." Other residents began bringing their notices forward. A contractor's van, a nurse's overnight vehicle, a wheelchair transport SUV, a pickup used by a disabled veteran. The case was no longer about my father alone. Linda had built an enforcement system around selective photographs, inflated fees, and residents too frightened or exhausted to appeal. Brad agreed to turn over all tow records and internal communications. The board treasurer asked for an immediate audit. 2 members admitted they had never seen the full contract. Linda tried to adjourn the meeting. No one moved. The residents demanded a vote. The emergency motion removed Linda as HOA president. Only 1 board member voted to keep her. The towing contract was suspended immediately. The board ordered Simmons Recovery to release my father's van without payment. Brad provided the storage location and agreed to repair the damaged wheelchair lift. Police officers arrived to take statements and collect copies of the tow authorization, video, messages, and financial agreement. Linda insisted the matter was civil. One officer pointed to her signed certification that the van had been abandoned in common parking without a disability permit. "That statement may be more than a policy dispute," he said. The HOA's attorney recommended freezing every towing case authorized under Linda's program. Dozens of residents submitted notices for review. All fines against my family were canceled. The board also voted to cover the ambulance charge, replacement equipment, legal expenses, and medical costs caused by the delay. Linda stood near the exit while the video remained paused behind her. The screen showed her holding a coat over the disability placard. For 6 years, she had defined community standards. Now the community saw exactly what those standards meant to her. Appearance mattered more than access. Compliance mattered more than health. Revenue mattered more than truth. As she left, no one followed. The following week, investigators requested the HOA financial records and Simmons Recovery tow logs. Brad cooperated fully. He admitted that several vehicles had been photographed from misleading angles and that location descriptions often came directly from Linda. The new board contacted every affected resident. Some received refunds. Others had liens removed. The van returned on a flatbed with the lift repaired and the medical equipment untouched. When I drove it home, neighbors stood along the street. They were not celebrating a vehicle. They were welcoming back the independence Linda had tried to take from my father. My father came home 2 days later. Dr. Patel adjusted his medication and scheduled a new evaluation. The hospital replaced the missing backup cable temporarily, but the original equipment was still inside the van when it returned. Brad personally delivered the keys. "I should have refused," he said. "Yes. I saw the placard. Yes." He looked toward my father. "I'm sorry." Robert nodded but did not make the apology easy for him. "Do better next time," he said. Simmons Recovery ended its HOA contract and adopted a new policy requiring supervisors to verify disability permits, private property authority, and access to medical equipment before any tow. The HOA also changed its rules. No vehicle could be removed from a private driveway without legal review. 2 board members had to approve every tow. Full photographs were required. Disability accommodations had to be considered before enforcement. Residents could retrieve medical equipment immediately, regardless of payment disputes. Emily joined the new board. She helped establish a committee for elderly and disabled residents. I created a simple neighborhood list of accessible transportation services, emergency contacts, and equipment repair providers. Several families contributed. A week later, I drove my father to his rescheduled appointment. The wheelchair lift lowered smoothly. The backup battery was fully charged. His records were secured beside him. On the rear window, I had placed a new sign. Medical access vehicle, do not tow. My father looked at it and smiled. A little direct. I've learned clarity helps. Linda had seen only an oversized van damaging curb appeal. She failed to see a father trying to remain independent, a son trying to care for him, and a vehicle connecting a sick man to the world beyond his front door. I did not win with threats or influence. I won with a doorbell camera, medical records, an honest witness, and the refusal to let cruelty hide behind the words community standards.